Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you very much for returning. Good to see you all. Hope you've had a good day so far and you feel refreshed and ready for the final session. In this session, I'm delighted to reintroduce and bring back on stage Teresa, who is going to deliver the closing talk. Well done. Thank you, Teresa.
Hello again. I will be brief. As you have understood, it is a great honor to do the closing. I just have a couple of slides, and I will try to mention very interesting references and suggestions and comments done by the panel and previous speakers. Okay. This is obviously something that we have heard already today. I think it is very important that we close the conference with this notion that artificial intelligence is and can be a force for good, so to speak, even though, of course, it also raises a number of concerns, namely in what regards consumer protection, as you have understood. Something that I wanted just to underline is that it is, I think, a fact that these machines or these engines or these tools affect countries across the world. So this is why that all discussions on governance, high-level principles, frameworks, collaboration should be as broad and inclusive as possible, also to be able to grasp the different experiences, the diversities between countries, because there are many. Again, sorry to talk about the guidelines. They are from the UN. They are not mine or my organization, but we are celebrating 40 years of the UN guidelines for consumer protection, which we are extremely proud of as the custodian of this important instrument, because it really sets a number of key features for national policies, for regulatory systems, lists consumer rights entitled Consumers' Legitimate Needs, and also for redress. And as I mentioned earlier, it targets not just member states, but also civil society organizations, international and regional organizations, and for the first time, businesses. And I think this is important for this audience because, again, I would underline that it's extremely important that businesses respect consumer rights, and I am convinced that the vast majority of businesses is in the market to serve well their consumers, their clients. Going back and going again on global cooperation. So I wanted to say that from our point of view, there are three issues that I believe were touched upon by several speakers here today. So first of all, the importance, of course, of global cooperation and of this interoperability, so through a coordinated approach. And I think this very much resonates with the standards community. David actually mentioned this earlier on, and I took note. Standards to ensure consistency and maybe even to, in a way, further encourage compliance. Fostering interoperability is extremely important. Also, as I mentioned, building regulatory capacity and digital infrastructure. I should say that in UNCTAD, because we have this very wide membership, we have really benefited, and our member states and other stakeholders, from the peer learning and knowledge sharing that we do through formal and informal meetings, sometimes online throughout the year. We have an UNCTAD informal working group on consumer protection in e-commerce that is currently working on 2 notes on AI that I will refer, and I will invite all of you to look at what we have been doing, and even why not to join this dialogue, because it is open to stakeholders' representatives. Finally, the importance of this inclusive governance. As I said, developing countries need to be at the table. Their challenges, their struggles, their limitations for lack of infrastructure, of skilled resources, of appropriate equipment need to be considered, and they need to be supported to build capacities and close the AI divide. So what we believe is that no consumer, of course, should be left behind in this rapid evolving digital economy. I also wanted to say that I believe that something that was said earlier on is extremely important. In any case, for AI to be successful, it needs to encourage, it needs to face public trust, consumer trust, users' trust. And this is something that businesses deploying AI technologies and businesses developing AI technologies should also consider. So they should embed consumer protection principles in what they are doing in order to ensure that the delivery is fair, is safe, and is inclusive. Of course, coming from the UN, global cooperation and collaboration is needed. I would say probably is needed now more than ever, considering the state of the world. I think this diverse community here is a very good example of how all of us, despite our specific goals, purposes, business models, mandates, responsibilities, can still dialogue, and that this can lead to very sound and positive outcomes. Finally, I wanted just to tell you that we are working on a technical note on artificial intelligence and consumer protection that will be soon released, and that we are drafting a checklist to support consumer agencies to, let's say, intelligently and safely use artificial intelligence in their day-to-day life. I would like just to close by mentioning some examples. So in developing countries, the Zambia Competition and Consumer Protection Authority, the Thai Office for Consumer Protection are quite advanced in these fields. And of course, we also have closer examples, for instance, in Poland and other parts of Europe and in the world. And finally, in our upcoming conference in July, we will host a roundtable on artificial intelligence and consumer protection. And I plan after this conference to ensure a representative of standards in order to make sure that standards are really in the conversation, because even though some of you interact regularly with your consumer agencies counterparts in your jurisdictions, a lot of my targets are not necessarily fully aware of this, and this will be a very good opportunity to expose them also to the potential positive contribution already existing of standards in other areas, but also for a safer, fairer, and inclusive artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I'm now going to ask David to come back on the stage, and we've got a short session here to enable you to ask all the questions that you've not been able to get through today, and these two are the only two who are going to be able to answer them. David, first of all, did you have any comments on what Teresa had said there?
Only to say that I entirely agree with everything you said. Clearly, for obvious reasons, and you quoted me, so it can't be that bad. I think it's the week after the conference in July is the AI for Good conference, and that's a very important conference for all of us because it's the kind of first time where ISO, IEC, and the ITU, which is the UN, are coming together to talk strategically about how they're going to collaborate more effectively in the world of developing standards. This is not at the technical level. You know, there is well-defined processes for creating the technical standards. This is much more at the strategic level. How are we going to respond to the sheer pace of change that is happening around us and remain relevant? Because it is happening so quickly, and it is so commercial that we have to be able to keep up and respond both positively and negatively But I think reflecting on what you were saying, and this is really my closing remarks, was the power in decisioning is in our hands. I think we sit back so much as individual consumers and rely on governments, policymakers, commercial organisations to do the right thing. I'm not sure we can trust them anymore. But they have to listen to us. I mean, the trouble with technology is it's endemic now. You know, are you going to turn around and say to Apple, I'm not going to use your mobile phone anymore? Because we have to use the mobile phone, but we can make choices. And where organisations are seen to not be responsible, not using the technology in a responsible way, we should make those positive choices as consumers to pick other alternatives.
Okay. Thank you. So before I open the floor to any other questions, I've got one that I'm going to pose to you both. So Teresa, you can go first. But it's if AI is going to be a force for good to protect consumers and protect society, how do we make sure that happens, and how do we hear their voices? It's really to follow up from this morning to make sure that we have some action to take out of this conference.
Well, I think one of the advantages of the UNCTAD platform, so to speak, is because, of course, it's so wide, developing countries, but also open to other kinds of stakeholders, of course, consumer groups, businesses, representatives, academia, other international and regional organizations. But actually, because of this overlap with AI for Good Summit of ITU 2025, we are also establishing some partnerships with ITU, which of course is much more knowledgeable from a technical point of view, so that we make sure that we are able to convey what we are hearing from our participants. So not just government, consumer agencies, but consumer associations. And in this panel that I was talking about, for instance, Consumers International will also be, I think, voicing what concerns, challenges, suggestions they are gathering from all over the world. But you have our webpage, and I'm easily found. If your organizations have any issues, I mean, the technical part probably won't be handled by me because I think I'm quite, I don't know, outdated. But I have a young, enthusiastic team that is very knowledgeable, and we will certainly try to find the information for you. As I said, the two reports that I mentioned earlier are interesting because as picturing what is happening around the world. And of course, data speaks very loudly. And if one has doubts about the divide, the market concentration, I think all of us intuitively know this. But when you see the figures, it's really scary. And we were talking earlier about platforms. We already in 2019, our digital economy report just said very clearly, and as a European citizen, I have to say I was a little bit shocked, that let's say 90% of platforms in the world were US-based and China-based. So Europe, okay, had Spotify. So, my God. And it's like, is this frankly the best we can do? A group of countries that are the most developed, the most resourced. It's shocking. And hence, that's also a way, and I think what you mentioned today about the UK programs, of course, encouraging innovation, development, all of this, and the EU, of course, the EU efforts towards this way are also extremely important. But going back to the question, so feel free to contact us. We often organize discussions online, which of course are much more practical these days because of course people can attend just for a part or have somebody from the teams attending. But it's very important also that we gather this information. Yeah. And I think all of you and your organizations are very valuable sources of information. So please come to us and we will be in touch. Thank you.
David, what's your thoughts?
Oh, you don't want to know. Teresa, you're going to be bombarded now. You said that you've opened the door and you're going to be completely bombarded.
At least this time I was the one who generated the bombardment, so it's fine.
We touched on this earlier. I mean, international collaboration is key here. I mean, this is about how do we get consumers more involved, I guess. International collaboration is absolutely clear. We need to do a better job as being part of the big standard development ecosystem and getting you guys involved. I suspect if I polled around the room, which I won't do, and said, do you guys find it easier to engage in the standard development process? I think there'd be a resounding, it's really difficult, it's really hard, and how can I do it from home without having to come to Chiswick and all that kind of great stuff. We need to find better ways of engaging you guys in those conversations, making it easier to have your voice heard. And I think also be seen to be having your voice heard. I think saying something one thing, but then actually it doesn't make a difference. There's no measuring impact from you guys, I think is poor. We need to find a way of ensuring those voices are heard. I think we need to, you mentioned this earlier, is we need to engage the emerging economies. I mean, clearly we need to get it right. I mean, it's poor that we can't, in the developed world, get it right ourselves, and we're playing catch up because unfortunately the genie with AI is out the bag, and we're trying to desperately find ways of keeping it under control. But if we can engage those emerging economies more effectively now in the debate, so they are part of the conversation, it's not just imposed on them, I think that will have a massive impact. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that we should take control here. This is not about jurisdictions making decisions for us. You know, we should be part of that debate. We just got to give people ways of being involved in that debate more effectively. And I think that's where standards can play a really, really key role. Really key role.
Brilliant, thank you. So over to you. We've got a question over here.
Michael Borelli, AI and Partners. First and foremost, thank you for today. Great panel, great discussions. My question is, the standards for the EU AI Act and AI regulations are being delayed, and there's potential for them to be delayed further. How important are standards to drive consumer adoption amidst concerns over trust, privacy, and other ethical related issues? Thank you.
Great question, David.
Essential. If that was the question, I mean, yeah, they're essential. But I guess essential in how they're applied is a question. I don't necessarily want to get into a political debate about the EU AI Act and the standards that have been harmonised as part of that, but we kind of go back to this global international consensus. People's voices need to be heard. That I think is the way we need to go. This needs to be everybody's voices at the table and is being heard, not a few people telling everybody else what they think the answer should be. And I think there needs to be greater collaboration internationally on regulation. Because I just see, you know, it's kind of, there's an argument that if whoever gets there first sets the bar, right? And if they set the bar really high, then everybody else has got to jump to at least the minimum, the bar or higher. And I think we should be coming to the table and having a discussion on what's good for the globe, not what's just good for one jurisdiction. I don't want that to come across as I'm being negative, because I think we do need regulation in these areas, but it's not that simple. It really isn't. And standards are an essential element, absolutely essential element of supporting and endorsing and propping up good regulation.
And can move much quicker. You know, that would be my comment on standards. You know, as technology changes, they can move much quicker.
That is a very big advantage.
We've got loads of questions. This is great. So we're going over here next, and then can we come to the middle and over to the right, because I ignored the right last time. So bear with us.
Thank you, Chimera Henry. I'm with the Consumer Center back in Uganda, but part of Cuckow. I have a few things that I find are key. Maybe they might not be key to the rest, but with the discussion, and first I would like to thank BSI. This has been smart and good. The question is, won't AI increase the digital divide? Because with all the presentations today, then the second one goes, how are we going to deal with litigation? As a consumer center or an organization back home, at times go in for litigation and takes years, and then you find you don't have strong and financial resources to deal with litigation. And my worry is, let's say like you've put it, Teresa, that it's more in the US and in China. Just imagine way back in Uganda, and I can't access legal provisions to deal with AI globally. Then lastly, one of the comments was, we parents need to do a lot. And the sad reality is, majority of goods and service providers today are youth. They are not parents yet. Now, because I go to school and I find that my children, well, they are leaving university, their lecturers are nearly their peers. Then you go to primary schools, the teachers in schools are nearly my children teaching my grandchildren. Then I ask myself, where are we, the parents? Because we are phasing out. And taking on Teresa saying, who are bombarding you are youth who are in policy making with regards to AI. Won't they just take in their own interests? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I've got the three questions as, does it increase the digital divide, how to deal with litigation, and the fact that AI is youth, and how do we deal with that? Teresa, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, the recent data from UNCTAD in this technology innovation report the slides that will be circulated, really show, yes, first of all, there is a divide. For instance, let's say the less developed countries in the world are the least developed countries. That is a formal designation, which encompasses something like 33 countries. So only 30% of the population living in these countries are online, have access to the internet because of lack of infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So, of course, this population will very rarely be able to benefit of the quick, easy, informative, enlightening, et cetera, useful access to internet and therefore to artificial intelligence. There are a lot of developing countries across the world that have digital infrastructures, but they don't have good connectivity. I'm sure all of you, well, some may come from these countries, but all of us have traveled, and you know this very well, in a number of parts of the world, and sometimes even in some developed countries where there are some areas where there is poor connectivity. By definition, the people, the businesses residing, established there, are also worse off. If you look at an annual data elaborated by this International Telecommunications Union, which is the UN specialized organization in telecoms and etc., there has been progress every year, which is very encouraging. But there is a huge divide with developing countries. Then there is a gender divide. And then there is a location divide, because population living in rural and remote areas are very much underserved. So these have been diagnosed and are being followed up. The thing is that, of course, the UN and other organizations are supporting these countries to provide, to complete, to improve the infrastructure, and to be able to provide for, let's say, the most developed services. That is one fact. Second fact, which I mentioned earlier and other speakers, the data sets that the AI engines are using often, if not always, are not comprehensive, are not fully representative, and don't necessarily have the quality we would aim for. What does this mean? This means that the AI responses cannot be inclusive, cannot be represented by definition, right? I'm not a technological person, but I'm assuming that so far it has not yet been impossible, even though, of course, machine learning can be very fast and can add value. But if they don't have the data as the basis, I would suggest that, okay, there are a number of vulnerable populations, inequalities in the world that have not been grasped. So the response that you'll have will be, again, underlining, increasing the divide. And that is a huge concern. So But this has been identified. The issue is that, okay, how we are going about this. And that's why I was saying that it is important to have developing countries at the table so that the diversity of realities, like at national level, we need to hear from the voices of vulnerable and disadvantaged groups in order to make sure that you are able to provide them the solutions, the answers that they need, adjusted to their profile. So that is for sure. Sorry, I forgot about the other questions. But
Sorry,
maybe
David, can you do the litigation one?
I'm no lawyer, but I can. I think the question was really about resource, wasn't it? The question was really about resource. In Uganda, you haven't got access to lawyers and people with knowledge and understanding how do you litigate against this new technology. And I think that's for us in other countries to support, as you say, the emerging economies to be able to get access to that support and know where they can go to get it. And I think that's for us to be able to do that. Very quickly on the kind of question of society, because I think the challenge here is we're developing the technology for those who aren't even born yet, let alone those who are young now. And I fear that we don't know what is really going to be the impact on society and our children. I'm probably the wrong person to answer that question, because you should go and ask my kids and their kids about what they think the world should be and how do we control the technology. Because I do fear that the education system is not going to keep up with the way we're using things like Copilot and ChatGPT. It's transformed in 9 months, 12 months, where children can just go and learn without having to learn anything, because the machine will do it for you. What is that going to mean to society in 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. I don't think we know. This stuff's going to have a fundamental impact on our futures, or our children's future, and our children's future. And I think we have to be responsible and very careful in steering that in the right direction.
I think from standards point of view, I would say the onus is on us to get younger people involved in standards. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think we're lacking there.
And other countries like China are leaps and bounds ahead of us. Go back 50 years, you used to be able to get a career in standards. You could be a standards engineer working in telecommunications. Yeah. For commercial reasons and other reasons, because we don't make anything in the UK, we binned all those roles. But if you go to places like China, they realise you can have an entire career in developing standards, because they see the power of soft power of standardisation, how they can influence the world.
Great. So I'm going to go here and then to Martin, if that's okay. Sorry. Martin, put your hand up again.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm Catherine Lustroth from Innovate UK, representing the voice of SMEs and helping them be innovative and access global markets. Thanks very much for the conference today. My question is about AI and happiness. So we know that happier countries are more productive countries. I feel like I'm being lobbied a lot of the time for AI tools that are going to make me more productive, more efficient, are going to reduce my cognitive load. But actually, to be a happier human, we need a mix of activities, right? We need some easier activities, some harder activities. What's the role of, and how do standards play a role in that, in making sure that we harness this amazing AI tool or engine for greater happiness, which I believe will lead to greater health and wealth for our nation and others?
Thank you. That's a question.
Well, I mean, it's a question and a statement, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, I completely...
Encouraging.
I mean, there's an argument to say we measure success in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Success is about growth and commercialism. It isn't about how happy that makes you. There was a wonderful speech a couple of years ago that somebody was on stage at what's the big global conference, Davos, where somebody's on a panel like this and said, we've increased the workforce through our factories by 25% and blah, blah, blah. And the lady said in the audience, well, look, but that's not success to me. People sitting on a factory floor for 9 hours, 10 hours a day, not even being given a break is not success. It cannot all be about growth and productivity. It's got to be about other things, and I was talking to somebody earlier, the current government are talking about using AI. They're using AI to improve society Are they using AI for productivity and growth? I kind of asked the question. I think we've got to fundamentally shift the way we think about this. And it's about our lives, not about how hard we can work. But I think the question is standards. So, we should be thinking about how we write these things into standards and embed them early enough in innovation. Back to your role in Innovate UK, is that, when we spend money on innovation, GDP, percentage of GDP in innovation, we need to put some of that money aside to ensure that we are embedding best practice into that innovation right at the very early stage, so that we're very clear on what the outcome is that we're trying to achieve. That it isn't just about productivity and growth. It's about our lives, about society, improving sustainability. And I think that's for governments to mandate that. I mean, we've been calling it for a long time, saying that we should spend more money on making sure. It's not about giving BSI loads of money to write standards. It's about embedding that knowledge in the right way into the early stage of innovation, which also then addresses the thing about how do you then get people at a very early stage in their career more embedded in developing best practice. So I think for me, that's how we do this.
Okay, thank you. Martin. Oh, I think it should come on, Martin.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to ask the question, and thanks for a great day so far. Martin Cottam, I'm a member of both the ISO and BSI committees on occupational health and safety management. At this morning's BSI Group AGM, Scott Steedman spoke about one particular thing to do with climate change, and that was the very symbolic and powerful action which ISO took, prompted indeed by BSI on behalf of the UK, to write into the requirements of all the ISO management system standards family the requirement to consider climate change. And you could argue that that requirement was, in fact, to be inferred from the wording that was there before, but it became very explicit, and the consequence was it drove a lot of discussion, it put a spotlight on the issue, and it created the demand for more guidance on what does that actually mean and how do we do it, and further guidance standards were produced. My question is, do the panel believe that there is any place for a similar leadership action from ISO in this space, a symbolic action which would put this firmly on the agenda, the whole topic we've discussed today, firmly on the agenda of organisations in all those areas of business for which ISO provides a management system standard? So their quality management, their environmental management, and 46 other topics on which ISO has standards. Because in doing that for climate change, there was a discernible impact, I would suggest. Is there a similar opportunity here?
Yes. I think, without necessarily stealing anybody's thunder, we should be considering human factors in the development of standards related to technology. So in the same way that considers the environmental sustainability goals in any development of standards, we should consider human-centric approaches to standardization within those technical standards that are developed. I think that would have a big, it might not have a big impact in terms of changing the way the standards are written, but I think it would mean people would consider it more, and what's the impact on the standards they're developing on us as humans.
I think that's a great suggestion, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, because at the moment, human factor standards tend to be separate to the technology ones, and
You could sign an accord that says we will consider it.
One to consider. Thank you, Martin. I'm going over here because I ignored them, so I apologise. But yes,
The other side.
have you got a mic?
The other side does not have a micro.
Do you want to give it to that person?
Hello, I'm Ruth Hillary. I'm a sustainability consultant, have worked on many committees with
Hello, Ruth.
the British standards, particularly on environmental. And about 5 years ago, I did a study for UNIDO on the implementation or whether there were standards in AI on sustainability. And it was a global study, and it was quite clearly there are not any standards that are applicable or really used in that area. And I thought I'd do a little bit of a thought experiment here. So I've just been adding in what we've been saying into ChatGPT. And I said, what question would you ask the panel? And it came up with this. It says, given that the development of robust consumer protection standards often take years, while AI technologies are evolving and being developed at a much, much faster pace, how can the standards community like BSI, or ISO to that matter, strike a balance between the need for thorough, consensus-based processes and the urgency to protect consumers through standards?
See, that's the problem with AI. That's a good question.
It is a good example.
Yeah, we'll put AI back in and I'll give you the answer.
Teresa, do you want to say that?
No, I think, well, it's very interesting. I just want to briefly say it is true that, like rules and regulations, they take time, a long time, probably too long to be adopted. But in a number of areas, namely on consumer protection, and again, I go back to the UN guidelines because they were drafted with, of course, contributions from member states and other stakeholders. You have the principles already out there, like in the UK legislation. Maybe sometimes what you need is guidelines. I'm a big fan, even though I'm a lawyer, of soft law. So anything that provides really useful, practical information, namely to businesses, how to go about things. And this can be done and can be drafted in collaboration with business representatives and and consumer and NGO organizations. So I think that can be the way out.
Completely agree. Navigation is key. That can help. Often navigation gets in the way and slows things down. In fact, I was on a panel last year at Geneva at the AI for Good conference, and there was I won't name names, but there was a chap on there from open source software company, and he said, you guys take way too long to get standards out the door, and we can bung software out left, right, and centre, and when you just guys get in the way. And I said, well, I'll pose a question to you. If I took your open source software and I put in a drone and I powered that drone using AI and I flew that over a building site using LiDAR technology to map out the underground assets, that would be a great thing to do, right? Yeah, we'd all agree. What happens if somehow the algorithm fails and the drone crashes into the ground and kills somebody? Are you, as the open source software company, going to take responsibility? He didn't have an answer to that, and of course he isn't going to take responsibility. And I think sometimes, you forget that these standards are here to save lives, and we can't just take them willy-nilly and say, well, let's just bung this stuff out quickly because then we can get out there using it, because we might kill somebody. So I think there's a balance. We have to strike a balance to say, we've got to find a way of being able to keep up, and I think we can do that by changing, becoming more digital ourselves, and not just BSI, but the whole world of standards, because ultimately, if you think about it, we could embed the rules into the systems themselves. Now, there's another question about how do we do that and self-regulate, but that's a different question. But there is a balance, and we've had this before when we've produced flexes where we've come up with ways of producing standards like you're doing software. So you release one, it's a little bit immature, but you can get it out there, you can then mature it as people use it. But you can't do that for medical devices or things that keep people safe at home to stop them dying. You have to strike that balance of, what are you going to be using this for, and can you do it quickly, and should you do it quickly?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sort of running out of time, so I'm going to do one more question. Sorry, yes, let's go over here. I can see people.
I'll be quick so somebody else can have a turn too. I would be letting down the London Borough of Harrow if I didn't ask this question. So it's following on from the previous comment about algorithms and programs. The children are learning games at school. That comes as a treat in golden time. Now, to help our children go in the right direction, and that's from anybody in the UK or elsewhere, should there be a standard that decides on the correct algorithm or program which is used to start with? So, like Fortran and Algol. Fortran, whatever you did, you couldn't get past the program if you placed the dot in the wrong direction. So if you placed an extra dot, the program didn't work. Now, is that the way forward, that you agree, or the British government agree with another country, this is how we're going to proceed? And thanks for listening. And I'm not sure after that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I'm not sure.
I think we'd agree.
I think we'd agree. I'm not sure we're the right people to answer that because I'm not sure that's our sort of standard. But yes, we can see where that's coming from. I'm going to close the questions there. I'm just going to very quickly ask Teresa and David. Now, David in particular, you've got less than 2 minutes to do this, okay? To give
Is
a quick...
well, because I'm standing between you and the bar, aren't I?
So steady. So you've got a very quick summary of today and the key points you take away. Teresa, you can go first. Or do you want me to make David go?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. No, thank you very much. This has been extremely interesting, and I as I said before, I think your input, suggestions, experiences are extremely important for legislators, regulators, international organizations. If by any chance you feel too shy to contact UNCTAD, I suggest through BSI. It's even worse. Now I'm referring everybody to you.
Thanks.
Or ISO.
I'm referring them back to you, Teresa, don't worry.
Julie Hunter, who did a very good job, I think is also a right person within BSI for possible contacts. But it is true that ISO has attended and intervened actually with Cuckow representatives in some of our groups of annual expert groups. And I think this is a good way because it simplifies. So of course, because we don't deal with consumers, we also don't deal directly with businesses. But I do believe that this experience and it's not the potential, and as I said earlier, is the power of standards is extremely important. And I think we need to collaborate more and continue this dialogue in other fora to make sure that, again, no country and no consumer is left behind.
Thank you, Teresa. David.
I should be very, very quick. In fact, somebody's written this down for me because I know I can go on about these topics for quite a long time. So AI is moving very fast. We all know that, very rapid, and it's difficult to keep up. And we, in this room, thinking about consumers and standards, we need to keep up, otherwise we will be irrelevant, and we need to remain relevant. International collaboration is absolutely fundamental here. The consumer should feel empowered. I mean, obviously there's a lot of power in standards, but I think there's a lot of power in consumers, and they should feel empowered to be able to get involved in having a say, not just about development of standards, but the development of standards that are going to influence policy and influence future regulation and how we're going to govern these emerging new technologies. So I think I'll probably leave it there.
That's great. Well done.
Well, I know wine's about to be served.
Okay. So that concludes this panel session. I'm now going to invite Scott Steedman to come up to help us close the day. Scott is our Director General of Standards. You two can stay there or go, whatever you wish.
Okay, I don't know if you are going.
Shall we go?
If
Go on, then you go. You go. Welcome, Scott.
Changing the team. Thank you, well done. Thank you, very good, David. Thanks a lot. That's great, that's great. It's you and me, Anne.
I think you're on the lectern, Scott.
Am I on the lectern?
Yeah. Oh, no, you've got
I don't have to be, I'm going to walk and talk.
You can walk and talk, sorry.
Are you going to...
You're finishing first and I finish second.
So no country, no consumer left behind. What a fantastic thought that is. What a fantastic thought that is. Let's also seed the thought that standards are all about information. Let's rethink what we mean by standards from a consumer point of view. What we mean is the information that enables us to trust the products and services that we are being offered. Governments are pointing us at things. Industry is offering us things faster and faster and faster. So let's say, do you know what? It's all about standards, including regulation. But maybe in the future, and we're talking about this in ISO Council, maybe they're not standards as we knew them in the 20th century. Clip binders, pages of paper on your shelf behind you. They're fragments of information, nuggets of data that are used and compiled by consumers themselves, using apps perhaps, or by companies or regulators to check. So we move into a new world in which you have ever-on assurance. Think of a car driving down the motorway, and it's a computer on wheels. We like that kind of joke. But actually, inside that, it's been driven by software, and the software is checking the compliance of all the components. It's warning you. I keep trying to switch the alarm off that tells me I'm veering across the lane because it's very annoying on a single-track road. But that idea that the machine itself, the product itself, is monitoring its own compliance with regulations and is constantly being updated. Because in the smart future, which is coming this year, ISO Council, ISO Board are going to deliver, firstly in Norway and Sweden, smart standards for industry. We have the opportunity as a consumer community to play into that. This is an amazing transition. It's the biggest transition for 50 years. So the consumer community needs to think how you want to exploit this extraordinary opportunity that the standards landscape becomes completely fragmented into elements. And of course, you can recompile it back into a thing that looks like an old-fashioned standard if you want, but you could equally have it embedded in your washing machine or your car or your whatever service that you're buying, so that you have the ability as a consumer community to endlessly check that you're getting the piece of information you want. So I think that we're moving from a world that was very difficult to access into a world that's going to be extremely easy to access. And we will find technology companies that will help us as consumers to navigate that. And that will help us have a very much more closer relationship between the content and you, the family, your friends and family. And for me, what's exciting about that is the idea that you become the user of the standard, the real user. We think of industry as the user of the standard. You know, industry writes standards for industry to make money, and they throw products at us and they hurt us. And actually, in the smart future, you are going to be the user. Because everything you touch of that product, and you see it with some of those online products that you buy in your house and everybody, you know, those sort of connected products, actually, when you tell it to do something or switch the button on or do something, we will know, or we could know, exactly which fragment of the standard you used. So you genuinely start to take control of the standards landscape. So that brings us back to the question of how do I get your views into the smart future? I've just taken over as chair of the Joint Standing Committee for our Delivery of Smart, ISO and IEC now working as a single delivery unit. And I'm going to form up the user group, what we call downstream, the user community, and your voices really, really matter. There's an upstream community, which will be the makers of the standards, including the fantastic representatives that we have here, that you've come here to talk and listen. We need more of you, but you will be there in the upstream, the downstream, the user community, the midstream, us managing the process. So this kind of network starts to become quite a different landscape to the traditional consumer voice in standards world that we all grew up in. And I encourage us all to embrace that. And I encourage all of you in Capulco, I mean, it's an amazing committee that we have, policy committee, is to tell me what it is you want from the smart future. Because it's up to us, and me in particular this year, as chair of that, to deliver it for you. So I think, for example, that we need professional consumer representation in our committee-making processes, absolutely, and we need trained people, we need more people, and thank you all very much for being here and coming from all over the world to talk about this. But we may also need more than just you. We also need to use technology to reach consumers who are never going to be representatives in a formal way. How can we do that? Can we exploit the fact that the content is now actually digital to reach a much, much bigger audience? To really find out what the consumer community, and then you will filter it, is thinking about this, that, or the other. What are the issues? Can we go out not in a kind of traditional cycle time of, oh, we're going 3 months public consultation, but actually reach out in a continuous way during a standards development process to get the voice of the consumer community all over the world into that development. And all the time, the pace will pick up, because as those fragments are used and as David said earlier, piloted and tested and improved, they'll be refined and improved all the time. The whole thing will start to move like a river, rather than as a series of stationary updates. It'll start to evolve in a much more fluid way. And so there's a fantastic opportunity here to make sure that consumers who are noticing some detriment are feeding that back in, and it's pretty well automatically updating what's happening, and then the products and services are themselves, like the car on the road, automatically steering to a new set of guidelines. I think it's really one of the most exciting times you could ever imagine being in standards. So I really, thank you so much for coming to London. We are delighted, aren't we, Anne, in BSI to be hosting you and here to see you all very close to Kensington Palace, of course, and all the sites of London. So I hope you enjoy your time here. But thank you so much. Capulco to me is I know you say, Scott, you'd say that, wouldn't you? But you are the most important community, because you are representing the people. You represent the people. And when you think of this as being the information that is the tool that governments and industry are using to provide the products and services for you, the people, you have a big responsibility. We have a big responsibility. I'm a consumer too. So we have a big responsibility to get this right. And as we flip into a smart world of the future, let's not look through the lens of the past. We need to really think about this. I need you to engage in Capulco massively and fast, because we are already taking smart standards to market. They're going to take smart conformity assessment to market. They're going to take smart regulation to market within 12 months, within 20 months. It's going to take us years to move into the management system standards. Don't worry about that. But it will take time to do that. But in the product side, it's going to be quite quick. And in the initial period, it's going to be quite rough and ready, as David was talking earlier on. Could be some rough edges to some of that. But it will self-heal is the ambition I have, is that the standards process we put in place will be a self-healing process, that with your guidance, we'll be able to direct those smart standards into some other direction. So again, listen, thank you so much. I'm just delighted. I won't be able to join you tomorrow, but you've got Sergio Magica tomorrow, I think. So he's an even more amazing person. So he's great. And then I've got a chat with Sergio. But thank you so much for coming, and it's great to see you. And I know I'm between you and the drinks, but thank you, Anne. Anne, you're going to go next. But it's just my thank you. So thank you. All right, good. Back to Anne. Thank you.
Thank you. I never thought I'd usher Scott off stage like that. That's really embarrassing now. I just need a moment. So thank you very much, Scott, for your words, and thank you for joining us here today. I've got a few thank yous that I want to say, and I'm going to bundle them all together so that I don't stand in the way of too many drinks. So I apologise, Steph, that I'm not going quite the way you wanted me to. But first of all, I just want to thank all of our speakers and panellists who've been involved today. I really appreciate everything they've done. They've been amazing, and they've kept going. And we've had some time challenges, and they've even taken direction from hurry up to get off the stage. I'd also like to thank our exhibitors outside who turn up and support these events. Really grateful to them coming along and spending time with you as delegates. Scott's already thanked the ISO Capulco members, but I'd actually really say it's been a huge honour to be here today with you all, and thank you for including us in your agenda that you've got going on this week. And I'd also like to thank all of our committee members and people that are outside of Capulco who've joined us today, because it makes a real difference to have a complete mixed community here, and you've been amazing.